What's up, wavers? Welcome to PhD and Waves. Welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm going over how to break forks and get elite connections. I'm going to show you guys everything I did to take my pattern from a lot of weak sides, forks, into more flawless, nice connections. I'm going to give you guys all my methods and routines in order to break your forks and really form nice connections to form all around your 360 wave pattern. But first, what is a fork? A fork is pretty much a misalignment in your pattern. It's basically when two rows of waves form into one row of waves, and it just makes your pattern look bad. Everything doesn't flow nicely. So the main goal for a lot of wavers is to break forks and get nice elite connections where every single row of your waves forms perfectly around your wave pattern. All right, so there's pretty much two reasons why you have forks. Either you have bad angles or parts of your wave pattern aren't stretched evenly. You basically have to look at your wave pattern like a puzzle. You want all your connections to line up with each other, and when they're not aligned, they're going to create a fork. You want everything to align nicely, and that's going to form connections. Okay, like I said, one of the main reasons you have forks is because you have bad angles. Maybe your angles are off. Maybe you're not focused on your angles. Maybe you don't mirror brush. You want to focus on precise angles so your connections can be precise. If you're just doing random brushing, you're just brushing your waves anyway, anyhow, your waves are going to look random. If you have random brush strokes, you're going to have random connections, forks, weak sides, and ripples. But if you want nice, solid connections, you want to have nice, precise angles. Also, you want to be consistent with your angles. You don't want to change your angles constantly, because if you keep changing your angles, you're going to confuse your waves. You want to have the same angles every single brush session, just so your waves don't get confused. And right now I'm going to break down your 360 wave angles just to show you guys how you should be brushing your waves. So when it comes to 360 waves with a beehive crown, you have 8 angles, and these are very precise because you want to form that nice circular pattern. If your angles are a little bit off, that will cause forks. So let me quickly show you guys the angles. First angle is just at the top of your head, straight down. Second angle is right here on the side of the top of your head. Then let's move on to the side. Straight down at a diagonal. Now let's move on to the back. Slight diagonal behind your ear. Now let's move on to the middle back. Straight down to the middle of your head. Now let's move on to the other side. Diagonal on the other side of the back of your head. Now let's move on to the side. Last but not least, the last angle on the top side of your head. Just like that. And notice how all my angles are flowing into each other. They're flawlessly going into the next angle. When it comes to brushing your pattern, you don't want to make any harsh turns or harsh changes in your angles, because that's going to force your angles to crash, and that's going to create forks. So for example, if you're brushing the top like this, don't change your angle so crazy and brush like this. You want to gradually change your angle and make sure each angle flows into the next angle so your pattern doesn't crash. In the beginning of my wave journey, I used to just brush my pattern with 4 angles, and each angle was a very harsh turn from the next angle. And what that did was it made my crown turn into a square. I only had 4 angles. If you want a circle, you want 8 individual angles to get that nice circular, precise 360 wave pattern. Another method that you can use is vertical brushing. Vertical brushing is going to break up your angles even more than horizontal brushing. Horizontal brushing is going to overlap your angles, which is fine, but if you do want to break up your angles even more, instead of holding the brush horizontally, you can hold the brush vertically, which is going to break up your angles into more precise angles, which is going to help your pattern because you are forming more precise angles and your angles are less likely to overlap. So let me give you an example. If you have this angle right here, and then the next angle is right here, as you can see, that overlap. But if you switch to vertical brushing, you're breaking up those angles into more precise angles that are less likely to overlap, which will give you more precise angles, leading to better connections. So it is a good method to use vertical brushing directly from your crown area all the way down to your hairline, a full brush stroke, just so every section of your head is balanced. The same thing goes for your crown. Let me break down the crown angles really quick for you guys. It's the same 8 angles. All right, so what you want to do is you don't want to use the whole brush in your crown, right? That's going to cause a line in your crown. See how it's going to split your crown? You never want to put the whole brush inside your crown. You just want to use the tip and you want to extend all the way to the rest of your pattern. All right, so first angle, extending all the way directly to the rest of my pattern. Second angle, extending all the way to the rest of my pattern. Third angle, extending all the way to the rest of my pattern. Fourth angle, extending all the way to the rest of my pattern. Fifth angle, extending all the way to the rest of my pattern. Sixth angle, extending all the way to the rest of my pattern. Seventh angle, extending all the way to the rest of my pattern. Eighth angle, extending to the rest of my pattern. So notice how each angle is broken up and it's slight turns in each angle. So all my angles flow into each other, forming that nice circular crown area. So you want to make sure you have good angles that flow into each other, and you want to be very precise with your angles, forming that nice circular crown. Also, notice how I used full brush strokes directly from my crown area down to my hairline. This just ensures that my whole pattern flows with each other from my crown all the way to my hairline. You don't want to brush your pattern like, brushing this area, then doing full brush strokes, doing short brush strokes. You want to make sure you're doing full brush strokes every time, just so your crown area is trained evenly with the rest of your pattern. Another way that you can break forks is balanced brushing. What I mean by balanced brushing is you want to brush each section of your waves evenly. I know every waver has a favorite side of their pattern. Maybe they like the top of their head, maybe they like the side of their head. But what you want to do is you want to focus the same amount of time and the same amount of brush strokes on each section of your pattern. So if you spend 5 minutes on the top, make sure to spend 5 minutes on the side of your pattern. I know a lot of wavers, they mainly focus on one section of their pattern. And what's going to happen is in between the waves, you are going to form forks if you are stretching and brushing one section more than the other. For example, if you're brushing the top for 10 minutes, and then you only focus on the side for around 2 minutes, in between your waves is going to be a lot of forks. So what you want to do is you want to focus on each section of your pattern evenly, just so everything can be nice and stretched and you can form connections. Make sure you have a timer, or make sure you're counting your brush strokes, just so each section of your pattern can be trained evenly and everything can connect. But if you're spending 10 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 4 minutes here, your curls are not stretching at the same length and everything is going to be misaligned, and that's going to create a lot of forks. With all that being said, a way that you could speed up the process of breaking forks is the wash and style. If you combine your good angles, if you combine your full brush strokes, and you combine consistent brushing with the wash and style is going to help you loosen your curls to stretch and break those forks. The reason this happens is because water allows your hair to be a lot more flexible, and then the lather is going to hold your pattern in place. So with that combination, you're going to be able to stretch your curls and you will be able to break your forks faster. You do have to make sure your angles are correct, and you do have to make sure you are being consistent with your brush strokes, keeping the same angle. So for me, I do the wash and style 1 to 2 times a week because it does help my pattern lay down. It helps me stretch out my forks, and it speeds up my progress. Another thing you want to be aware of is your hair length. When it comes to your waves, it's very easy to lose progress if your hair is too short or if your hair is too long. If you cut your hair too short, you're actually cutting off progress, and it's going to be very hard to develop those waves again. So I always like to keep my hair on the thicker side just so I keep my progress. If you cut your hair too low, you will risk losing some progress and you will risk losing some depth. So you do want to keep your hair thick. Make sure you are at your curl length just so you don't lose your curls or lose your waves. Because if you cut it too low, once you lose those waves, once you lose that depth, you kind of have to start over and redevelop those waves, and all that brushing and training your pattern kind of went to waste. So you do want to keep your hair on the thicker side. Make sure you stay at your curl length. And this is different depending on your hair texture. For me, I always keep my hair around a 2 guard with the grain, but if you have looser curls, you might have to keep your pattern at a 3 guard, 3.5 guard, depending on your pattern. Another thing you want to be aware of is if your hair is too long, because if your hair is too long, you might risk over curling or over wolfing, and this is when your hair frizzes up and your curls curl back up. This could also cause forks in your pattern. Like I said, a fork is a misalignment in your wave pattern. So when your curls curl back up, it's basically moving out of place, and this will cause forks. So you always want to keep your pattern laid. You always want to make sure everything is nice and laid down. You do want to avoid over curling and over wolfing because this is moving your curls out of place. So when your curls kind of get unmanageable, when they start curling back up, you do want to trim down your waves just so you can continue to control them. If you can't control your curls and they're curling back up and they're doing whatever they want to do, this is going to cause forks because you're not able to move them in the direction that you want them to. So for me, as soon as I start over wolfing or over curling, I instantly get a haircut just to keep my hair trained and laid down. This goes into the next reason why you may have forks. You're not wearing your durag enough. A durag is meant to keep your pattern laid and to protect your pattern. But if you're going to the gym, if you're doing all these things without your durag and you're going to sleep without your durag, this is essentially messing up your pattern and it's going to cause forks because your waves are moving out of place. If you're spending so much time brushing your pattern into place and then you decide to go to bed without a durag, your curls are going to be shifted. They're going to be going in all these different directions and you're never going to gain progress. You're only going to get forks that way. So make sure you're saving your progress with the durag every single night, whenever you're going to the gym, whenever you're sweating, whenever you're doing any activity that might mess up your waves. Make sure you're wearing your durag. Obviously, if you're going out to a party, if you're going out with friends, you don't have to wear your durag, but the rest of the time, make sure you're wearing your durag when you're going to sleep and things like that. Another reason why you may have forks is you're not combing your pattern. If you're just brushing your pattern, you are going to develop a lot of forks because a brush doesn't really penetrate your whole wave pattern. It kind of just glides over the first layers of your pattern, but a comb actually goes into your pattern and it trains all layers of your pattern, and it also ensures that your curls are stretched out. But if you're just brushing your pattern, especially when you're wolfing, the lower layers of your pattern may not be trained. So you want to make sure that you're combing your pattern just so it penetrates all layers of your pattern, just so you know all layers are being trained. Combing can also prevent over curling, which I went over earlier, which causes forks. So you want to make sure you're combing to penetrate all layers of your pattern, and you want to make sure you're combing to stretch out your curls. But if you're combing in addition to brushing, you know that you're penetrating all layers and you're stretching everything out, then you could go in with a brush to lay everything down. So if you notice you have forks, this might be because your pattern is tangled up, scrambled, and not fully trained. So the comb is basically gonna go in, penetrate all layers of your pattern, stretch everything out, detangle, and this is going to prevent you from getting forks. Make sure your angles are consistent, like I said, with your brushing. Another thing you want to do when it comes to breaking forks is analyzing your pattern. Analyze where your waves are going. Try to identify where you need to stretch out your waves, because at the end of the day, your waves are a puzzle. If you see this section is more stretched than the top, you just have to analyze where your forks are coming from. Focus on brushing more to stretch them out. This also applies to angles. If you feel like you can connect some sections of your pattern by changing your angle, do that. So let me give you guys a quick example on my wave pattern. All right, so as you can see, it looks like I have some forks right here. And it just looks like I have to stretch this section a little bit further so these can all align. So I'm looking at my waves like a puzzle. It looks like this is good, right? I just have to make sure this section is stretched a little bit further. So what I'm gonna do is during the wash and style and during my regular brush sessions, I'm just gonna make sure to focus on this section of my pattern to get it to stretch and align with each other. That way I'm looking at my waves like a puzzle. I'm seeing which areas are stretched out more, and I'm making sure to stretch out any sections that have to catch up and align to other aspects of my wave pattern. The last thing you have to understand about breaking your forks is you're actually growing them out of your pattern. The forks you have right now, they are technically permanently in your pattern, so you're actually training the new growth and your new hair after you get a haircut. So while you're doing the wash and style, while you're doing good brush angles and good brush sessions, while you're wearing a durag, you're actually training the new growth. So once you get a haircut, you're going to be cutting off all the old hair and all the old waves, and you're actually growing that hair out. So once you continue to use good brush angles, once you continue to do the wash and style, once you continue to wear your durag, slowly but surely through months and months of training your pattern, your forks will go away and you will improve your pattern. Your forks aren't going to break in a couple days. It's going to take weeks and months to slowly move those forks out of your pattern, grow them out of your pattern. And once that new growth comes in, once you get a haircut and you cut off all that old hair, all those old waves, your new growth and your new waves are going to have way better connections. So basically the reason I'm saying this is you have to be patient, but slowly you will see progress over the course of months, but you will see small improvements every week. I'm just saying breaking your forks is a process. For me, it took months, almost a year to get to where I am now. So you do have to be patient and trust the process of breaking your forks and perfecting your pattern. So continue to get good brush sessions in the morning and at night. You want to brush your pattern from anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes in the morning and 15 to 30 minutes at night at least. You could brush for more if you do want to see more progress. But yeah, that's pretty much all the reasons why you may have forks and all the ways you could fix your forks. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you guys learned something new, make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to visit PhDandWaves.com. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.